My neighbor forged my identity to claim my house as her own, so I set a trap, caught her on camera, and now she's bankrupt and banned from the HOA. When I first moved in, my neighbor, I'll call her Diane, seemed too helpful. She brought over muffins, offered to collect my mail, even took my trash cans in without asking. At first, I thought she was just neighborly, but something about how she always mentioned my mailbox started to itch at me. She'd say things like, "Don't worry, I've got eyes on everything out here." It felt less like kindness and more like she was staking a claim. Still, I brushed it off. I wanted to believe she was just lonely. About a month in, I noticed a few bank letters never arrived. I assumed it was a mailing issue, until Diane casually mentioned she'd seen a torn envelope near the sidewalk. When I asked if she's picked it up, she waved it off. It looked like trash, hun. The other week, another letter vanished. She'd say things like, "Maybe those companies need to fix their delivery systems." I wanted to believe her, but the excuses were too convenient, and the missing mail was always financial. After a weekend away visiting family, I came home and noticed my mailbox had scratches near the lock, tiny, deliberate, as if someone had been fiddling with it. I didn't say anything, but I took photos. The mail inside looked undisturbed, but I couldn't shake the sense that someone had tried to get in. I didn't want to be paranoid, but suddenly, all of Diane's casual comments about watching my house felt loaded. So I started watching her too quietly. From my kitchen window, I bought a small camera and installed it inside a decorative planter near my porch, angled just enough to catch the mailbox. 2 nights later, I checked the footage. There she was, Diane casually walking up, pretending to jog past, then pausing. She glanced around, reached out, and tried the lock. She didn't force it open, but she tried. My stomach dropped. This wasn't neighborly concern. This was targeted, and I still had no idea why. One morning I noticed the lid of my trash bin wasn't fully shut, and some papers were scattered. I always shredded financial documents, but I'd been lazy the night before. When I dug through, every bank statement I'd tossed was gone. Not random flyers or food wrappers, just those. I hadn't told anyone I threw them out. Diane had waved to me from her driveway that morning. Like nothing happened. I started double bagging everything and storing mail inside. It felt like I was being hunted. A college friend of mine works in credit risk, and I asked him quietly to check if anything weird was happening under my social security number. He hesitated, said it was a gray area, but agreed. The next day he called and said a loan application had been submitted with my name and address. It had been denied, thank God, but the amount requested matched my mortgage. I hadn't applied for anything. That's when the fear turned into fury. I typed up a fake legal notice, something about a fraud investigation tied to the property, and slipped it into my own mailbox. I left it poking out just enough to tempt curiosity. Less than an hour later, Diane was outside, pretending to water her lawn. I watched through the curtains as she snuck up to the box, pulled the letter, read it, and froze. Then she crumpled it and sprinted back to her house. That reaction told me everything I needed to know. At the next HOA meeting, I stood up during open forum and said I had proof someone had been tampering with my mailbox. I played the video from my phone, grainy but clear. Diane's face turned ghost white. Some neighbors gasped. She tried to cut me off, said I was paranoid, but I kept going. I explained the loan application, the trash theft, the fake notice. My voice was shaking. People stared at her. No one defended her. For the first time, the power shifted. Diane didn't stay quiet. As I played the footage, she screamed across the room, "This is stalking. She's obsessed with me." Her voice cracked, and everyone froze. I stood my ground. "That's my mailbox, Diane." She stormed out before I could finish. A few neighbors muttered apologies to me. One older man shook his head and said, "I always thought she was sweet." I didn't feel vindicated yet. I felt exposed, and I knew this was just beginning. I went to the police with my footage, loan alert, and photos of the tampered mailbox. The officer took notes but frowned. "It's suspicious, sure," he said, "but we need a clear signature or motive tied to her name." My heart sank. I felt like I was screaming into the void. Diane was playing just under the radar, smart enough to avoid obvious mistakes. I left the station gripping my phone, knowing I needed one undeniable thing, proof with her name on it. I upgraded my mailbox to one with a biometric lock. A few days later, I found it scratched again, but this time she's gone too far. A neighbor across the street saw I am messing with it in the early morning and snapped a photo. I filed a report immediately and asked for fingerprint testing. It felt drastic, but I didn't care anymore. If this was war, I wasn't fighting nice. My privacy was gone. I needed justice. I pulled together everything: video clips, missing mail records, credit checks, and brought them to a lawyer friend from college. He looked through it all, then leaned back and said, "This is enough to open a civil case, maybe even criminal if we get lucky." I didn't feel lucky. I felt exhausted, but I signed the papers. Diane had made it personal. I was going to make it legal one night. After I showed my husband the latest camera clip, he sighed and said, "You're spiraling. Maybe she's not doing anything." That hurt worse than Diane's games. I documented everything. I was scared, not paranoid. But he didn't see it. No one really did that night. I sat in the dark kitchen, laptop glowing, digging for proof with shaking hands. I knew if I didn't keep going, no one else would. I was truly on my own. I was walking my dog when I spotted a crumpled receipt on Diane's driveway. Out of habit, I picked it up and froze. It was a vet bill, but under the client info, it listed her dog's name and my address, my full street address. My name wasn't on it, but the coincidence was too perfect. It wasn't a typo. She had used my home as hers. I finally had something physical. She slipped and I caught it. Mrs. Lanning, the elderly woman 2 doors down, had always given me wary looks. She once said I was dramatic about Diane, but one afternoon, she knocked on my door with something in her hand. "Found this near the bushes by my fence," she said. It was a torn envelope addressed to me. Ripped open and tossed, she looked embarrassed. "I thought maybe you were right." I thanked her. Stunned, even the skeptics were starting to see the cracks. I printed out the denied loan application my friend found, and something about the signature nagged at me. A few days later, Diane left a note on our HO bulletin board about lost keys. I took a photo. The loops in the signature were identical to the loan file, same fake cursive, same trailing in. She wasn't even trying to change it. That was her signature. That was my proof. Digging through my email trash, I found something that chilled me: a loan approval email, addressed to me. But I never applied. The account was created with my CNIA, but a spoofed game address 1 letter off from mine. I cross-checked timestamps. It was filed the same day Diane offered to grab my mail while I was out of town. That wasn't kindness, that was a cover. She was building a paper version of me. In a moment of gut instinct, I tried my daughter's birthday as the password for the loan portal. Diane once babysat her. To my shock, it worked. The portal opened to an application dashboard, loan documents, a digital signature, and my name on every page. She had used everything: my birth date, Senia address. I saved every file. It was her final mistake, and my turning point. I was ready to quit. Every lead felt thin. But on trash night, something told me to check her bin. Deep under food scraps, I found a plastic sleeve with a smudged card. My heart nearly stopped. It was a fake ID with my name, her photo, and my address. It was poorly made, but unmistakable. I took photos, sealed it in a bag, and finally breathed. This was it. This was the nail. I followed Diane one morning after she left in a rush. Up, clipboard in hand, she pulled into a strip mall and walked into a loan office. I parked far enough to not be seen. Then walked past the window pretending to be on the phone. Inside, she was seated at a desk, smiling. I watched her pull out a form and sign my name, her handwriting. I snapped a photo through the glass. It was undeniable. A week after I submitted everything to my lawyer, he called me. The bank flagged her. They cross-checked your Senia after you reported the fraud, and it triggered a match on her new application. Apparently, Diane had tried again, old as ever. This time, the alert went straight to legal. They froze the account and launched an internal investigation. I wasn't alone anymore. Someone else finally saw what she'd done. After everything unraveled, my husband sat beside me on the porch, eyes red. I'm sorry, he said. I should have believed you from the start. He held my hand like it was the first time. I didn't say much, just nodded. He started crying, and I let him, not because he was broken, but because I finally wasn't. That moment mattered more than any courtroom victory. He was still here. We were still us. Now when I walk past the mailbox, I feel something strange: relief, not fear. Not paranoia, just peace. Every scratch, every doubt, every night I stared at grainy footage, they all mattered. They led me here. I look back and realize I never wanted revenge. I wanted clarity. I wanted safety. And by refusing to give up, I found both. I'm not just a survivor, I'm someone who trusted her gut. Anne was right. After the lawsuit hit and the fraud investigation confirmed everything, Diane vanished. Her house was seized. She'd used it as collateral for fake loans. The HOA officially revoked her membership, and her name became a warning at every meeting. One morning I saw a moving truck outside, and by nightfall she was gone. No goodbye, no closure, just silence, and that was enough. The court ruled in my favor. Damages, legal costs, and punitive compensation. It wasn't millions, but it was enough to breathe again. I used part of it to host a local seminar on identity theft free to the community. People came, they asked questions. Some cried, and I stood there, not just as a victim, but as proof that the quiet ones can win too. A month after everything ended, the HOA president mailed a letter to every resident. It acknowledged the events, the fraud, and the harm done to me, and by extension, the entire block. It didn't undo the isolation I'd felt, but it mattered. Neighbors who once looked away now waved when they passed. One brought cookies, another offered to walk my dog. They finally saw me, not as paranoid, as right. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe to check out more stories on my channel.